Hi everyone, this is vlog 2 where I'll be critiquing athletes on their skills and capacities in speed and agility. Acceleration is key in many sports including athletics and in both court and field sports. Acceleration is the rate of change in velocity and therefore how quickly an athlete can move. For effective transfer of force, an explosive triple extension from the back limb, a neutral spine and a position with the chest up is required. A piston action of the legs and an exaggerated pushing and pulling motion of the arms can help to achieve this. I have chosen a sprint start to show maximum acceleration from a 3-point start position. Harry is a weightlifter with no speed, drill or sprint training experience. Harry lacks skill as this is an unfamiliar movement pattern for him. His history of movement means that he has to find alternative movement strategies and this may result in suboptimal choices. In the start position, Harry needs to achieve more flexion at the knees, particularly in the back leg and to lower his upper body and head. This is clearly a skill problem due to the lack of knowledge surrounding this position. In order to rectify this, I would cue him to try and get low to the ground to maintain his current torso posture and implement constant practice and repetition to move this suboptimal position closer to the technical model. He is initially achieving acceleration off the ground, but struggles to continue to accelerate throughout the movement. This could be due to him using maximal explosive triple extension in weightlifting, where minimal repetitions are required, but it does indicate a strong posterior chain. Harry needs to achieve a high knee position and better contralateral hip extension, although he is achieving a positive shin angle and forefoot position. We need to make this control available to him as he will not be able to utilise his powerful triple extension capabilities. We use wall drills to practice driving the knees through. Initially he found the coordination challenging, so we switched to single leg knee drives so that he could receive feedback. He achieved a neutral spine in both exercises. Harry is spending too much time on the ground with a relatively long ground contact time. I used a variety of plyometric exercises including pogos and drop jumps. I use these to increase ankle stiffness and allow the athlete to cope with high eccentric forces. It creates rapid pre-activation and improves the rate of force development. Using rapid eccentric stretching followed by an explosive concentric contraction improves the strength shortening cycle in the lower limbs. We also used a pullback drill to encourage touchdown of the foot behind the centre of mass, increasing touchdown distance in order to produce force horizontally from the ground and reduce braking forces. It also aids with lower limb stiffness. To reduce ground contact time, I used a resistance band exercise to increase his arm drive, leg speed and knee drive. We used single leg bounds to improve his balance and ankle stiffness. They were also to improve his stride length. As this exercise was unfamiliar, the bound distances were fairly short, but this would improve over time. Harry again after these exercises, he has begun to improve with regards to continued acceleration, although he still needs to flex his knees more in the start position, and this could be a mobility issue. His knee drive has improved significantly, indicating that it was a skill issue and that this acceleration has been increased with practice and implementation of the simple knee drive and pullback exercises. The forward lean is greater as a result of increased acceleration. Leaning forward directs the resultant force in the direction he wants to go. The larger the acceleration, the larger the forward lean. This allows the leg to push back against the track. Although his acceleration is improved, he still has insufficient arm drive, causing a laboured cyclical motion. I cued him to utilise and pump his arms as well as adding some competition to motivate him. A strong arm drive is said to develop downforce as well as preventing rotation in the transverse plane. Stretching the hip flexors as well as foam rolling could also increase knee drive due to increased mobility. Harry improved over the session. This would suggest that this is a skill issue rather than a capacity issue. Katie is a weightlifter and has competed in trampolining. She shows sound technique in the skill, but due to previous injuries, she has some strength and mobility imbalances demonstrating a capacity issue. Katie is in a solid position with her hips higher than her shoulders and is flexing at the knees. However, she struggled to hold her torso as her left side is weaker due to a previous injury. Katie generally shows sound technique with a strong acceleration off the start and throughout, a high knee drive and a positive shin angle. She achieves adequate arm drive but she tends to overstride slightly. Katie achieves adequate forward lean but struggles to hold her torso and begins to tilt very slightly due to her weak abdominals on one side, which could affect her acceleration. She is struggling to cock the foot due to previous ankle injury which could reduce her strength and mobility on that side, affecting her foot position in flight, but she does have a good forefoot landing. Katie has generally excellent hip mobility which enables a high knee position. She is less mobile on one side and although she is able to put herself in these positions, evening out imbalances will enable her to produce and access force more effectively across both limbs. She should therefore focus on the less mobile hip by using a single leg hip flexor stretch. The Pallof press is an anti-rotational exercise used to stabilise the core muscles. It works the obliques and helps to improve strength, power and stability. It can be used as a warm-up exercise to prime the core or as a general strength exercise. It should be a controlled movement. This will be useful for Katie to even out the strength imbalances in her core, which resulted from her previous injury. We used a dumbbell split squat as an exercise to develop strength in the lower limbs. As sprinting requires a high level of hamstring strength, I would progress this exercise by slowing down the eccentric phase and by adding an isometric hold. These fallout drills will help Katie recover her steps naturally whilst promoting forward lean and a positive shin angle, as she has to catch herself. It should produce a faster sprint cycle by improving turnover as she reacts to gravity and also to stop her overstriding. Agility is the ability to transition or change direction quickly while maintaining balance and coordination. I'm using a cone drill with a cut and an option of 2 gates to run through. Cone drills are vital to building a solid footwork foundation as well as learning to control the body. This change of direction is similar to that of a cut in rugby, for example. For Katie, changing direction is unfamiliar due to movement history. You can see she lacks skill as she runs very close to the cones, demonstrating some lack of control, especially when decelerating. We had to remove her shoes as this was making her even more unstable. Anatomically, Katie is tall and has extremely long levers, and although she is very mobile, she is unable to get into a low base position in this drill, often leaning back, disrupting her centre of mass and creating an unstable trunk strategy. However, she is planting her feet and her hips are facing in her direction of travel. We need to provide strategies to prevent the movement from breaking down. I gave Katie a simple non-reactive drill with a tighter change of direction, but we slowed the movement down slightly and increased the speed over the session. We practiced pushing off the outside leg and loading with the inside leg, cueing her to push the ground away. I also asked her to exaggerate the movement around the cone. I aimed to challenge Katie by increasing the volume but also ensured quality throughout the drill. I introduced Katie to lateral shuffles so that she could practice getting into that low base position. You could progress this using resisted shuffles and then a shuffle to a cut. Again, we use split squats as they develop strength in the lower limb, but we progress them to lateral dumbbell lunges as they replicate the movement more closely. Again, I have used the Pallof presses as the cut drill requires rotation around the trunk. Other exercises that could be used include side planks and controlled oblique hanging leg raises. Will is a rugby player. He has used speed and agility drills in his rugby training, so he is familiar with changing direction. He has no recent injuries but has a slight weakness in his hamstring and calves, which demonstrates that this is likely to be a capacity issue. Will is also tall and has long levers, but he has the ability to direct and steer his forces effectively through his limbs between his centre of mass and the point of force application. This ability will allow him to beat his opponents in a game when making a cut. Will needs to work on cutting in a slightly lower position, and this could be due to limited hip mobility, but also his anatomy. Plyometrics and strength training can lead to greater lower limb strength, speed, and core stability. He is able to point his hips in the direction he wants to travel in and maintains a forward lean whilst he is accelerating through the drill. He plants his foot in a solid position and there is no sign of knee valgus as he is able to externally rotate at the hip. As Will is capable of completing this skill, developing his strength and mobility capacities will allow him to get lower to the ground and complete the skill at higher speeds efficiently and effectively. Again, his foot is planted in a neutral position and that same hip is externally rotated away from the direction of travel. He is creating good lateral force production whilst maintaining a sound trunk position. I used a hang power clean to improve power and develop strength in the posterior chain. Although developing lower limb strength and power is important, these whole body exercises incorporate the trunk and core, which is also vital to transmit force in these movements where a change of direction is required. Will must develop adequate core stability to improve performance. Using squats will again help to develop the strength of the musculature in the lower limb and the trunk so that more force can be transmitted effectively in the drill. We use barbell squat jumps to improve reactive strength, which is the ability to quickly change from eccentric to concentric phase in the stretch shortening cycle. Other single leg lateral plyometric drills could also be used to benefit his performance. Will would benefit from some foam rolling, particularly in the lower limbs and around the hip flexors. It is particularly important to carry out stretching and mobility work to decrease the risk of injury and improve performance.